It's Thursday, which could mean one of a couple of distinct possibilities. One is that it's garbage day. In fact, it is garbage day outside. The garbage has not arrived yet, which means at any point during the recording of this illustrious program, the garbage man could show up. And I'm not kidding you. My garbage man cannot get the garbage can emptied into the friggin' garbage truck consistently. It ends up they've got that claw arm that comes out, and then picks up and goes funk funk into the truck. He picks it up and he manages to grab the garbage can all lopsided, so it dumps half of it out and then gong. So there's a chance of a lot of noise going on. And if you hear the noise, it's my garbage man doing what my garbage man friggin' does. But I am joined today, because today is Linux Thursday, and we talk about Linux, by Gardner the Linux Gamer. That's that guy over there. Wave at everybody, my friend.
How's it going, my friends?
Well done. This episode is brought to you in part by Pogo Linux, who make the best servers on the planet. Go to pogolinux.com, click on the servers, click on the storage servers, click on the largest storage server you can, and just play a game. See how much storage you can deck out into a single 6U storage rack. It's badonkers. It's insanity. It's you can put a petabyte plus in there, and then do the math and try and determine how many episodes of the Lunduke Show you can fit on that one server. I've done it, and it made my brain melt a little bit. I'm Brian Lunduke. That guy over there is Gardner Bryant, also known as the Linux Gamer. It's been so long since I've had you on the show, man. Why have you been avoiding me all this time? Aren't we friends? Don't we get along still? What's up?
I was all gung ho to come on the show, but then people started giving me crap and came all stuff. I'm like, I'm the only one defending you. It seems I'm the only guy who defends Lunduke.
Oh, awesome. I love it. I love it. Yeah, that Lunduke, man, he's sketchy. He's all anti-freedom with his paywalls. All right. So if you're new to the show, here's how it works. You ask a whole lot of questions. We pretend like we know something about Linux, and then we answer them. Today, though, it's going to be a little bit focused. To start with, we've got the Linux Gamer on the show, and also the Valve news. So I kind of pushed people to ask me questions about this, but I think they were gonna anyway. The first question comes in from David. Valve just announced changes to Steam Play that will allow users to run Windows Steam games through Steam for Linux using a tool called Proton, which is also an open source project, blah, blah, blah. All right. Well, a lot of you guys asked me questions around this because basically it allows the Linux Steam client to install and run Windows Steam games, which is intense and huge. So we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've installed and played, correct? I saw you have a video up about it, but I have not watched it because I'm what they like to call a bad friend. So I have not watched it yet.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I installed Doom 2016.
Yeah.
And man, does that just plays really nice.
Yeah, that's the only one I've tried, actually, because that's the only I don't have Windows games, so I had a key for that one, and that's it.
Yeah, I had a key for it too, actually, and so I went and I redeemed the key and played the game, and yeah, it's really cool. I have played a couple other games. I had a Steam library before I did my channel, so I had a whole bunch of I had a Steam library before Valve announced the Linux client of Steam. So I had a bunch of Windows games, like Unreal Tournament 2004.
But those aren't supported officially yet.
No, they're not. But you can actually play unsupported games through this too. But so I don't think I had any other games that were officially supported, according to that list that's on their blog post. So that's the only one that I've tried that's officially supported right now.
Right. So yeah, the only one I've tried that's officially supported is Doom, and I haven't gone off into the unofficial weeds yet, just because I wanted to do the official test. What do they expect it to work like before I went off and noticed that a bunch of games that I wanted to play didn't work, and then I started complaining about it. I wanted to try that out first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so the performance was oddly good. I mean, it worked. I mean, it helps that I was running it on a really beefy rig with a nice GTX 1080 and all that sort of thing. But I would suspect it should run on lesser hardware just fine as well, based on what I'm hearing from other people. That's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
that's cool.
I was playing it on my GTX 970 and it worked great. I mean, like there was a little bit of screen tearing, and I found that that's something that's common,
Yeah.
among games that run in Proton at this point. Hopefully, Valve seemed to be on top of that. With like, if you have ever played a game with the Steam Compositor running as the native compositor of your OS, then like it completely eliminates screen tearing. So it might be just that I'm playing games in GNOME. I'm not sure exactly, but we'll find out going forward.
Good gosh, man. So I gotta ask, what are from a high level? It works, and that's rad. Like from a technology point of view, I mean, this is basically like the holy grail of what we wanted. Most people wanted Wine to do beyond, because I mean, running Microsoft Office is cool, but running all of the latest games is actually fun, right? Like, like a lot of people say, what keeps me having a Windows partition is games. They don't say, well, I gotta have a Windows partition because Internet Explorer is so rad. Like, no one says that. So this is it. This is like the holy grail of I can now nuke my Windows partition. But like clearly, I mean, there's positives and negatives here, right? Like, so what are you feeling about this? What is the Linux gamer who has the word Linux and game in your like tagline handily doohickey? What do you feel about the inevitable onslaught of Windows games coming in and just being playable on Linux? Like, is that good or is that bad? Like, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had conflicting feelings about this. I made a video of the rumors that this was happening, and in that video I laid out 5 reasons that I thought it was a good idea and 5 reasons I thought it might be a bad idea. Really the biggest problems that I have with it still right now is that you're paying money to developers who aren't supporting Linux.
Right.
Now, that's like, I mean, that's something that I've always had a problem with. That's why I've been opposed to playing a lot of popular new games through Wine, even if they run great.
Right.
Because that's just not something that, I love Linux. I love Linux gaming. That's why I have my channel. And it's like, if I were to spend my money on games that aren't natively supported on Linux, I feel like that's not really awesome.
Right. Right. Did you see? I mean, even like Iculus, Ryan C. Gordon, who's famous for porting games to Linux. That's like what he does. It's what he's done for a long time. He ports big games to Linux, and he was tweeting out to everybody. He's like, I hear y'all are excited right now about this whole Steam thing. But he was basically like, you're basically selling out and getting rid of all of your ethics and morals and throwing them out the window because you found something shiny. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me and I paraphrase people, but he's not wrong. I mean,
yeah, I've seen a lot of people, most of the comments on my video from today that went into like the technical aspects of this stuff is that, people are like, oh, this is going to bring people over to Linux from Windows. They'll be able to ditch Windows. It's kind of it's like a half step in the right direction. But Windows uses drive letters like A:/B:/C:.
Love those drive letters. Yeah.
Because of legacy DOS. That's what DOS did for drive letters. And Windows did that today because of how DOS was back then. And it's
I love you, DOS.
This is one of the things is it's like, if we're going to be, let's say like 5, 8, 10 years from now, Linux becomes the default gaming platform, right? But developers are still familiar with Visual Basic or whatever it is. They're programming with Microsoft's proprietary code.
Hopefully most AAA titles aren't made with Visual Basic 10 years from now.
Right.
That would make me a real sad panda, but I get what you're saying. I get the basic idea of what you're going for.
Yeah, well, it's like how long is this compatibility layer going to be supported? How long is it going to be available? Is it going to be going forward forever?
Yeah.
If Linux is the default in 10 years, are games still going to be made using compatibility mode? I can see that as being an issue.
Perhaps, but here's how I look at it, because I've been thinking about this a bit. I'm thinking of it in terms of like console games, right? Like when a new PlayStation or a new Xbox comes out, one of the big things is, sure, there's 11 titles that take advantage of the native APIs and they look great. But we're also adding in support for the last generation, like through like an emulation layer. Like Xbox 360 can be played like 100 games on the Xbox One or whatever, things like that, right? And I'm kind of looking at it like that, is like, here we've got Linux. Linux is the next generation gaming system for PCs, right? And Windows is last generation. So here's an emulation layer so you can play last generation games on your new generation operating system. I know that might not like pan out with everybody else, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Like it.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it's a last gen emulation layer.
Right, but I can see it from that perspective, right?
Of course you can, because I laid it out there so succinctly and perfectly. It was delightful.
Right, but like and the other thing is, it's like if there's minimal performance impact, and developers are more familiar with Microsoft's technology,
are they just going to stick with that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. It's like you have to make the clean break between 360 and Xbox One, because they are fundamentally different architectures.
Yeah.
But when it comes to wine and PCs, games from like the 16-bit processor era are still capable of being run today. And with these translation layers and with virtual and all this stuff. So it's like, I felt like, with the Steam runtime and with Steam OS, I felt like it was a clean break, like the clean break we needed. And I am kind of concerned that going forward we're gonna have like this backwards compatibility.
We're gonna be stuck with it.
Yeah, we're stuck with it.
That's what gaming on Linux. But here's the flip side of that. Devil's advocate. Let's say that every developer, every single Linux dev says, well, the hell with these Linux native APIs. I'm going to just abandon every Linux native game app. Even Iculus, Ryan C. Gordon's like, the hell with it. I'm building my apps in Visual Basic. Right? So they just strictly go over to the Windows API stuff to do it, right? But they test against Linux now, and they ship against Linux because it's cheaper to do. So we have no native Linux, but we have access to 99%, maybe even closer than that, of all Windows games that ship now will be not only playable, but work really, really well and be supported on Linux just through the translation layers that we've got of Vulkan and everything else. What is that bad? What's different between that and say having a game like Minecraft that's written in friggin' Java that everyone and their dog is playing for years on end? There's nothing native and Linuxy about Minecraft, right?
No.
And there's a ton of games like that. So what is so bad about utilizing the Windows APIs on Linux? I mean, other than the fact that I had to stop myself from vomiting in my mouth for saying Windows APIs on Linux. I mean, other than that, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is that bad?
No,
we still get all the games.
Not on this idea at all. I think it's a great idea. I honestly think it should have been done a long time ago. But like, I'm like trying to argue the finer points here. Like,
yeah.
The idea is that this will allow more people to ditch Windows, and that's the Machiavellian bargain that Valve have made, because right now, you like
Yes.
Microsoft is locking down Windows. They are like locking it down, and
Yeah.
you don't own your computer anymore if you're running Microsoft Windows. So it's like Windows 10.
Right.
But you know, I lost my train of thought because I want to say Windows 10.
I know. You wanted to say that. If it helps any, my month of using Windows 10 was absolutely brutal and awful. It was just the worst. But you know, I see what you're saying. Windows is locking it down, and now that we've got this from Valve in Steam, the biggest games marketplace in the world,
Yeah.
more people can just say, well, all my games are working, so I can install whatever the frig OS I want.
Yeah.
And just move over to Linux. It's fine.
Right. And you know, I think that that's great, honestly.
Right.
I'm worried about like what the future looks like. In the short term, I think we'll probably get more games, but we'll get fewer native games.
Maybe.
And you know, if performance through Proton is comparable, you know, to native gaming, then why does it matter? But at the same time, it bugs me.
I know, it's in there, isn't it?
Just a little bit.
It niggles around like it's like it's like that episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents where the earworm gets in the ear and it goes in there and it lays some eggs and it drives the man slowly insane. It's actually not like that at all, but I was just thinking of that episode.
It's exactly like that.
But I see what you're saying. See, like there's part of me, the free software fundamentalist is like, I want to flip tables. I want to be like, no, get that off of my system. But on the other hand, if it increases the market share of an operating system that is fundamentally free, but people are just utilizing it to run some, but not all closed proprietary stuff, that seems better. That's a win.
I mean, I'm very interested to see what the Steam hardware survey looks like
In a year.
next month.
Or
No,
next month.
I mean, just the amount of Linux users who were running the Windows Steam client in Wine
Yeah.
were counting as Windows users.
Yeah, but now, even if they install Windows games, if they predominantly are playing it on Linux, it's going to count as a Linux check in Valve's systems.
Right. That's
Right.
going to flip the numbers quite a bit.
Well, I see that was a big deal for me. When I looked at that, I'm like, because that was my first thought is like, well, this is just going to artificially inflate the Windows download numbers. But Valve's like, no. If you're playing it on Linux, even if it's a Windows only game that just happens to work on Linux now, it counts as a Linux purchase.
Right.
So now all the developers are going to see what percentage of people are using Linux, and I think that's awesome.
I agree.
I love that.
That was
Love
one of my
that.
other big concerns about this, is how it will report in the analytics for developers.
Right.
And when I found out about that, which I didn't know when I published my video, so I was still talking about this as a concern.
Yeah.
But like this is actually really awesome because, you know, the numbers are going to change. And I think I don't even know what we're at right now. I haven't looked at the hardware survey in a couple months, but the last time I looked at it, we were at like 1 point
Yeah, it's really small.
something low. But like that number is going to increase. I mean, the number of people in the comments of my last video and the one before where I talked about the rumor, and the number of people on Twitter who have all said this,
Right.
I'm ditching Windows now.
Yes, I'm hearing it too.
Oh my God, it's like everyone's saying that, and you know, granted, we have the audience to say that,
Right. I mean, it is a little echo chambery, I know, but still.
but as this product rolls out, as they start adding more support for games, I'll tell you, like, people are gonna be leaving Windows in droves. So many of my friends and family and people online say to me all the time, I would use Linux, but I have
can't.
software that I
Right.
have that I rely on, and it's, you know, Creative Cloud, it's Microsoft Office, and it's games. That's
Right.
it.
That's it. Right. And Microsoft Office support, it tends to lag a little bit, but we always get there. So that becomes less of an issue. So yeah, it's Creative Cloud and games.
Yeah.
That becomes the two actual stumbling blocks. If we get rid of games, I mean, most people don't need Creative Cloud. You know?
No.
Most people, however, do need their games.
Yeah. Yep.
This is a big deal. I think it's great. In part, one of the things I think that's great about it is that Valve is actually investing money in the development of these open source technologies. It's not like it's a weird proprietary stack. It's Vulkan and it's all these other things that are just open source, and they're hiring people to work on it and contribute it back to the community. So we can just take that code and even if we can run all that code without Steam, without Valve, we can go off to the side if we want to. And I like that. So that makes Valve a better open source and free software contributor. We get more people utilizing Linux, which is great, which means they're more likely to get exposed to more free software and more other open source software. We get the numbers increasing in Valve's system of how many people are on Linux, which is going to encourage developers to try and at the very least test their games better on Linux. This seems like I can't see a loss here other than the whole Visual Basic thing. You know what I mean? I can't see a loss there.
Right.
I can't see it. I love it. I mean, it's a chicken and egg, right? Valve's like, the hell with it. We'll make the chicken and egg at the same time. And then once everyone's moved over and then large enough share to Linux, Valve can even be like, well, we'll just, wind this program down in 5 years, and we'll give developers enough time to start moving over to something else, some different API set. Maybe. I don't know. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Absolutely awesome. It's like if Adobe came out and was like, look, it would cost us too much money to port, Premiere and Photoshop to Linux. We're not going to do it because we're cheap and we don't want to do it, and that would cost too much money. But we'll hire 3 dudes to work on improving Wine until it runs really, really well on Linux.
Yeah.
And then we'll support it on Linux. We'll provide customer support and technical support on Linux. It may not technically be a Linux binary, but it'll run at native speed. Yeah. That would be a huge win for Linux desktop all together, and may eventually lead to Adobe making Linux binaries. Right. When otherwise they just never were gonna. And that just seems like a win.
I agree. I totally agree. I think, it's the right step forward, and hopefully they have a plan after this.
God, I hope so. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I still think it's friggin' rad. I don't know that I've seen as much excitement around Linuxy gaming in a while. I mean, not since they announced Steam machines, which, So Valve basically controls Linux gaming at this point.
Essentially.
Yeah. Which is both good and awful.
Well, there's a lot that Valve has to offer Linux as a community, not gaming. I mean, they have like the eyeballs of like the majority of users, and the fact that they have the money. They have the money to be pushing Linux as a means of going forward. That's what they're doing here. They're trying to get people who have historically been, I can't use Linux, I have too much invested on Windows. They're trying to undermine the vendor lock-in.
Yes, they are. I love that. Have you noticed in the mainstream gaming press, everyone is reporting on this?
Yeah. Yep.
People who do not report on Linux gaming news. Ever. Like, they never, like, when a game comes out, like if Civilization 6 comes out with Linux support, they'll mention, and it runs on Macintosh and Windows, and then they'll just forget that it runs on Linux. Like, they don't even think about it. And now they have whole headlines dedicated to Valve is making it so all those Windows games run on Linux. And that's the headline of, like, gaming press and PC press, not Linux press. That's awesome. Because you and me can shout from the rooftops, but we're shouting, we're preaching to the choir 80% of the time. We need the press outside of us to be covering it, and now they are.
Yeah.
So thank you, Gabe. Jeez, this is fantastic. We'll see where it goes from here. You're right. I mean, I don't know what the next couple of years will hold. I may regret being psyched about this.
Right.
But I don't think so.
My concern is that I will regret it in like a year or two. But, we have to move forward. I haven't seen, like you said, I haven't seen this excitement in a long time. And it's like, something has to be
embrace that. Yeah.
has to be done, and I think this is probably the right move.
I think it is too. I think it's freaking awesome. All right, we've got more questions relating to this, so I'm just going to move on. This is from Daniel. We give Valve/Steam a lot of beep for being closed, yet they are continually hiring developers to work on FOSS projects like Mesa, Proton, SteamOS, Linux kernel, Wine, DXVK, etc. Something DRM-free advocates GOG are not really doing. What are your thoughts on Steam from both a user and free software standpoint, considering their flagship product is closed source? They are doing a lot for Linux gaming through hiring developers to work on FOSS. Well, we just basically covered all of that, but Daniel makes a really good point. Steam is closed. Valve is a closed source company. They sell and make their money on closed source, but they are investing heavily in both open source and free software projects. Yeah. That's not nothing. You know, I mean, it's like if again, to go back to the Adobe thing, it'd be like if Adobe came along and be like, look, you know, we're going to dedicate, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next quarter to developing open source software and to bringing our stuff to open source and free platforms. Well, we got to support that. We got to high five them for that. Right. I mean, this is it's a big move.
You know, it hasn't really made sense to me that Valve is a closed source company, like especially since they announced the Linux version of Steam, because like they invest so much time and money into free software, but they also promote mods and like you know, like they make what is it, Source available for a lot of people, Source the engine, and it's like it just doesn't make sense that they keep it proprietary at this point.
I think you're right. And I actually have quite a few fans that are watching this show and subscribe to it that work over there at Valve. So I'm going to hear about this a lot. But I personally think, from what I've seen internally at Valve, they are nerds, and nerds tend to want to open the code. I mean, even if they're not free software purists, they just want to open it up, because why not? That's better. That makes it easier to port stuff, because they, like, if you're a dev and you're making Portal 2 or Portal 45 or whatever portal they want to be working on at any given point, which will never probably ship, you want to think that someday when you're retired, you turn around and all of a sudden someone's ported your Portal 2 game to like a toaster and to run in the car dash system, and it was just like a random project. So that's cool. That's what nerds want to do. And I feel like from Gabe all the way down, they're nerds and they want to do that. They went with what they knew worked, right? Where the case studies are of how you sell video games, this is how you do it. And so they just went with it. And they've been trying along the lines, I feel like, to shift that, to migrate over to something a bit more open. Maybe not completely open, but at least more open. That's how I view it anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I want Valve to be more like open source, orient, like make Steam open source, because like maybe
the client should be open source. You don't buy it anyway.
Steam DRM proprietary or some crap, but like make the Steam client open source. That's just a good idea. Like it increases security. It makes everything better. I don't know.
I know. I 100% agree. I 100% agree. I don't know. I'm not sure I want them to even have DRM in there, because I yell at people for making like web browsers that are open except for the DRM bits, and I probably yell at Valve for doing the same thing. But just the same. The thing about DRM is like that's what the industry expects. That's what they expect and they want now, right?
And it's like, okay, whatever. But
I get it.
Keep it out of my way, whatever. I'm not DRM, as long as it's not like decreasing the value of my product, of what I, do.
Here's another problem. Here's another thing. Let's look at this way. Let's say this causes basically everyone in the Linux gaming world, like every Linux using gamer, to start using Steam like exclusively, which they kind of are heading that way anyway, right? So let's say they do that. Well, now we're all locked into a DRM laden lockdown silo that
Yeah.
we can't really easily break out of. So, you know, whereas before with our open games, we can download them, store them on a server, and reinstall them and recompile them 30 years from now on whatever stupid version of Gen 2 we can manage to get running. But with Steam, we can't do that, right? So in a sense, we're getting these millions of Windows games, but we can't archive them really. We still have to just be reliant on Valve and Steam staying in business, staying afloat, and keeping their current model existing in order to play those games in the future, which is a little bit concerning. I mean, that does bug me a little bit. I have a big Steam library, but every time I see it, I go, yay, I'm going to play some games. In 10 years, none of these games will be playable for me because the odds of Valve existing in 10 years is actually not that high because game companies don't normally last that long and they've already outlived their normal lifespan. So going on odds, these games I would have to rebuy again on some other media, and most of those games aren't available on many different types of media. They're only available online through Steam half the time. So we're stuck. Those games 10 years from now, like I'm not going to be able to sit down with my grandkids and play any of those games. I'm just not going to be able to, right? So I think Steam's doing this great thing for getting people to move over to Linux, and that's great. But on the flip side, it sucks because unless they have a long-term strategy to DRM everything and make it so you don't ever have to have a connection to the Valve servers, those games have a limited shelf life. And that kind of is a bummer. Like every time I see it, it bums me out just a little bit.
Yeah,
like a little bit of sadness.
When I talk about, because I have 426 games on Steam right now.
Shut the front door. That's ridiculous.
And like, I can tell you, like most of them I actually received from because I do my channel.
Yeah.
So I didn't pay for most of them. The thing is though, I have. Wait a minute. I'm gonna look at my Nextcloud. I have 136 gigabytes worth of games that I have from Humble Bundle and from GOG. So like, and I've been buying most of my games from Humble and from GOG recently.
Same. That's how I've been doing too.
And you know, I made a couple of videos ago, I said that I don't trust Steam. And people have been talking about how like, what do you mean you don't trust Steam? Why don't you buy your games on Steam? And it's like, it's literally what you said. It's like, if I pay money, I want to get something for my money. It feels like I
want to have it.
Yeah, it's like imagine Netflix, but for video games, and that's kind of what Steam is, right?
Yeah, it really is.
You pay for the individual license for your games, but if the Steam server goes down, you can't download it. And it's like I don't like that at all. That like it creeps me out. It skews me out, and it's like. Yeah. I like having my stuff backed up. I like having my, all my data secure in a single or in a, in my own server. I like that. That's relying on someone else's computer. I don't like. So that's what I mean when I say like, and
I'm the same way. I agree.
Like, DRM with Steam, it doesn't bug me too much because it's like I don't even own those games technically.
That's true. If I think about it like that, like I have a Netflix subscription, so it's just like my Netflix account, except for games. What's cool is the investment that Valve is making into getting all these Windows games up and running should allow those game publishers to publish their games on like the Humble Bundle, GOG.com, and various other places. So we can hopefully just download them using those technologies with all those packages kind of pre-built in, and we should be good to go. That would be the ideal sort of scenario for me. That would be fantastic. If I could start seeing all those Windows games show up on GOG all of a sudden with a nice little penguin right over there. Oh, that would be wonderful. Oh, my heavens.
Just to clarify, I have 136.9 gigabytes of Linux games from Humble and GOG.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah, like I didn't download the Windows games that I got in like monthly bundles and stuff like that. Yeah,
I agree. I do the same thing. I grab those bundles. I grab the games over on GOG, but I just grab the Linux game. That's not true. In some cases, when the games I know are being emulated either in DOSBox or ScumVM or something, I'll grab the Windows installer if that's all they have on GOG, install it, and then archive off the actual files and delete the Windows installer. Like, so I occasionally, that's actually the main thing I use Wine for. And I don't even know if I use Wine for anything else, is to install installers from GOG for games that just run in DOSBox.
Yeah,
that's what Wine's for me. That's what it does.
Yeah, dude, I'm the same way. It's like I'm more excited about playing my back catalog of old games in Steam than I am about playing new games. I don't care about most new games. Most new games, I look at, one of the only new games I'm really looking forward to is Doom Eternal. Like, I don't care about most other new games because they're full of like stupid microtransactions, and they're all uninspired clones of each other.
They are.
I'm looking forward to going back and playing like Rise of Nations.
Ooh, good one. Yeah.
Age of Empires 2 HD edition. Like,
forget the HD. What is this HD edition garbage? I want it running in 640 by 480 at the most. If there's more than 256 colors on my screen, I'm flipping a table. That's what I'm saying straight up.
Listen, Brian, unless you're playing a freaking CRT monitor at that resolution, you can go get out of here with that nonsense.
I want to see the pixels. I want them big and blocky and chunky, son. That's how I roll. All right. We're on question 2. Let's see how many questions we can get through now that it's almost 40 minutes in. Dax asks, all right, the big news with Valve's Proton project sounds like good news for gamers who want to make the switch. However, while it does help ease the transition to Linux, many argue the Wine project will actually hurt the vid. We answered this one already. Daniel asks, Dwarf Fortress, what are your thoughts? Virtual accolade back at you, Daniel. Dwarf Fortress, you played it?
I have not played Dwarf Fortress.
You got to play Dwarf Fortress.
I've heard.
Oh man, it is big and complicated and funky. It is intensely large game, but it's great when you see a game that doesn't really have like graphics, when it's all text based and ASCII art. Oh, warms my cold, icy black heart.
I like aesthetic of it, but it just seems like an insurmountable challenge to learn how to.
It's huge. It took me hours before I got to the point where I'm like, oh, okay, this will be fun. But the first several hours were grueling and broken feeling. But then once I got into it, Dwarf Fortress is great. I mean, it's a big sandboxy, world-buildy sort of thing. It's an epic game. But yeah, it's a good title if you want a terminal-styled title. It was worth checking it out. Brock. Let's switch gears from games for a moment. Brock wants to know, in your opinion, which is more stable, Arch or Debian Sid? And for those of you who don't know, Sid is the code name for the Debian unstable. It's unstable. So that's so Arch or Debian Sid.
Well, I've never used Arch proper, but Manjaro is awesome, and I really like it.
Manjaro's cool.
I've used Debian Sid either. I've used like what was the previous one?
Jesse.
I've used Jesse. Yeah.
Jesse's cool. The Debians, the code names are all based on Toy Story.
Yeah.
I love it. Several people keep mentioning that to me. Like, you got to tell people about this. And I think a lot of people know, but I think a lot of people also don't know. So there you go. Toy Story. I would go Debian. I always go Debian. Debian rocks. I love Debian. All right. Chris, holy moly, wall of text. Here we go. Chris asks, do you know of any open source voice-to-text services that can do so locally cut off from the internet? I am wondering because I think it would be cool to control stuff around my home without relying on Google or Amazon. And to be clear, I'm not thinking of full-on natural language parsing and such, just something along the lines of simple noun-verb pairs like speaker play and lights off or crockpot on. Gotta have a crockpot on. If such a thing were to exist, I think it would isolate it. I think I would isolate it on a Raspberry Pi and only send the process text commands over UART to a Master Pi for the program that would do the actions. That is the nerdiest way to do home automation. I love that. Thus isolating the microphone from the internet. Right now I'm thinking of training a neural network on some keywords, but would like to hear your thoughts. You are hardcore, Chris. I love it.
Dude, I love that. Like, it's just kind of a like a casual thing. I'm thinking about training a neural network. I love that so much. We live in the post-apocalypse.
This is my crowd, man. I'm telling you, the people that watch and listen to this show are the most awesomest people. It is insane. They just casually throw this stuff out there. They're like, yeah, I was reverse engineering this processor for a little while because I didn't have anything to do after dinner. Like, this is just what we do. All right, Chris, there's not a lot. So the Mycroft guys, they still, even though they're the open virtual AI assistant, they still send the audio off to be processed remotely on the server. And as far as I remember, significant portions of that are all closed source. I do not know of any tools like that work really well in that regard. There are some speech to text tools that I've seen, but it's been a long time since I've seen any activity on any of them. Wow. Yeah, we're kind of out of luck in that regard. And I mean, on the proprietary side, most of them are connected to the server. They upload the audio to the cloud and then bring it back down in. It sucks. I like where you're going with this, though. Yeah. Have it isolated so there's one microphone. It's connected to a machine that is, hooked up via Serial or UART or something like that. So that way, no one can hack into it, listen to it, and then, I don't know, sell your voice off to other people. That's the way to go.
You know,
yeah.
I just got my server set up here, and I legitimately have had this exact same question recently. Like, I'm like, what can I do to do my own home automation? I want to roll it myself. I don't want Google. I don't want Amazon nonsense in this. I want to do it myself. And I haven't looked into like the actual like nuts and bolts of it, but I really want to do this.
You know what I've actually been thinking? I've been thinking instead of going the voice automation route is go old school like panel automation. Like what was it? Lazy Game Review. LGR did a review of a DOS based home automation system with like little sliders and some buttons and whatnot, right? And I was looking at that chunky piece of like late 80s plastic that he used for it, and I'm like, oh, I could put together some switches, go down to the hobby shop, get a couple of cool clickety switches and toggles and whatnot, and wire them up to the GPIO on like a little Raspberry Pi here or something like that, and then start doing that to automate my lights and whatnot. See, now that starts to be a little more interesting to me. I like the home automation like 1980s Battlestar Galactica style. You know what I mean? Like, I want it. If I want home automation, I want to be able to still push a big button. I want to hear a click. I don't trust my voice. I don't trust software. I made way too much software to know how crappy software is. I don't trust it. I wanna push buttons, and I want it to be all electric. That's just me. That's just me.
See, I'm still enamored by the whole computer, lights, that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course you are. I mean, there is a certain Star Trek love there. I mean, I get that. I just, it's just not my style.
I had an Echo and I had a Google Home.
Did you really?
And like, yeah, I did. And it's like, and the thing that I realized is that the people on Star Trek were reading scripts.
Yeah.
It's like I want my Echo to play a song, and I'm like, oh shit, what's the name of that song? Alexa. Oh crap, I can't remember the name. It's that. It's like I'm like totally tongue tied.
Right.
I mean, it might work for some people. It doesn't seem to work for me.
It doesn't.
I don't know.
So there you go, Chris. We're of no help whatsoever. Okay, now I got I got this question, and from one VLF-UB5Y0QUITIR.
Is that base 64?
I don't know what we're dealing with here. He or she asks, are you ever going to make your paid content available on privacy and freedom respecting platforms? Right now on Patreon, I have to identify myself through payment and run Google's proprietary JavaScript CAPTCHA just to be able to support you. I hear you, man, or gal. I've heard you talking about alternative options in the past, LBRY, self-hosting, LiberaPay. Is there any progress in this? I would like to be able to support you and get your content without running proprietary JavaScript and having to identify myself. I have so many thoughts here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. First, yes, it's difficult because if you want to give me monies, it's hard to do so entirely anonymously. And to be quite honest, I don't know that I like the idea of 100% anonymous payments. I know many people are going to disagree with me on that, and I respect you for disagreeing with me on that, and I totally understand why you feel it's important. I really, really do. I've heard all the arguments, and I've made some of them myself. However, honestly, I just don't think anyone's really that worried about you sending Lunduke $1 or $2. However, once you sign up through Patreon or whatever, you get the RSS feeds. You never have to actually log into Patreon again. I give you the RSS feeds. There's no login associated with them. And I make a very big point of this, I make my Patreon RSS feeds the easiest feeds to pirate in the world. There are roughly 1,100 patrons right now for this show. So it's 1,100 of you. The last show I did has been downloaded 16, 17,000 times via the RSS feeds. If I do the math, and I'm not the best at the mathing, I'm guessing a lot of people probably are getting it illicitly, or on average, every patron is downloading it to like 5 or 7 or whatever devices, which but see, here's the thing, is I want people to be free to be able to use it on whatever device they want, old devices, new devices. Like I've got like this my little NA10 tablet here, right? I like this tablet because it can play MP4s and MP3s. I've got my RSS feeds on here. So I get my show. I guess that's where at least one of the downloads is coming from. But I can get my show on these, decade-old devices, and there's no login, there's no identification. I'm not keeping any of the IP addresses around, though I guess you have to take my word on that because it's on my server and you can't check it. But realistically, I can't make it much more privacy respecting than that.
Yeah.
I am posting more and more things over to LBRY, though they had a screw up where they messed up my account and they've just now fixed it again. They fixed it and then they screwed it up and then they fixed it again. They're trying really hard. They're good people. They're doing a good job. But even then, I can't get much better than an essentially anonymous RSS feed. As far as using something like LiberaPay goes, the problem with that is LiberaPay has no integration with anything that I need. There's no good integration with community-based stuff. There's none of that, right? So I have to build all that myself and tie it in somehow, which there's no good way to tie it into LiberaPay, which means it's 100% a manual process where every week or so I got to go through, find the email addresses of everyone, which now it's not anonymous anymore, and set you guys up accounts on servers so we can communicate and all that sort of thing. And that's just not going to function. Plus, I process more than LiberaPay does, just like me. And so if I moved off Patreon, I don't even know if LiberaPay can handle it. I don't think they can handle the Lunduke. The Lunduke load is too much. So I can't do it. I would love to. I'd be interested. But anyway, so that's my thoughts on all of that. It's hard. I want to be as privacy respecting as possible, as open and free to me as possible. But we have to tie into the modern world of payment and whatnot somehow. That's my thoughts. That's my thoughts on all that. I don't know. You have a Patreon too, Gardner. I mean, you've got that all set up too. Do you wrestle with the same sort of deals?
Well, so I offer my patrons like rewards, and it's impossible to offer. I have a LibraPay account too, and it's almost impossible for me to offer the same reward levels on LibraPay because of how it's structured.
You can't do it.
The other thing about LibraPay is they just had this big kerfuffle with the payment processor.
Yeah.
And like they sent me an email and they were like, "Hey, you might kind of want to get all your money out right now because it's not going to be available in a couple of weeks." And so I tried to do it, and I got flagged for being suspicious. What? And then I emailed them and I'm like, "Yo, hook me up. What the heck?" Again, I got flagged for being suspicious when they unflagged me, and then I tried to remove my money again. I got flagged again, and so I have like $200 in there that I can't get out, and it's past the deadline, and it's like that sucks because my fans gave me that money, and it's like I feel like it just went to waste, you know?
Right? You're right. I mean, so yeah, there are options out there. The real big problem is like LBRY, like library, is cool, but it's also early stages and buggy and limited in what you can do with it. LiberaPay, cool, but early stages, small, buggy, right? So if I moved over to any of those exclusively, we would have literally months where you couldn't get my content and I would be broke. So I can't. I am open to options, though. If someone has an option where it is totally freedom respecting, completely private, all open from end to end, and it's going to work, I'm there in a heartbeat. I will ditch every proprietary service that I touch so quicker than a friggin' hot potato that is a very, very hot potato. But that said, Patreon's not too bad. The one thing that's nice about Patreon is they do listen. They've screwed up repeatedly in the past, but every time they've screwed up, then people have been like, no, don't screw up so much. They're like, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, we crossed the line there. Our bad. Like they listen at least. So not perfect, but hey, I'll take it what I can get. Peter, big love from London, England. Why don't files saved in AbiWord open in LibreOffice and vice versa? Are the file formats free and open? What's up? All right, Peter. So two different things going on here. First, AbiWord does have its own file format by default, but it should be able to write into the open document format as an extra option. You just have to select it. However, the open document files that AbiWord writes to aren't always completely compatible with LibreOffice because neither LibreOffice or AbiWord do a 100% perfect job of reading and writing all iterations of open document format. And that sucks because I really like AbiWord a lot. It's lightweight. It's a great little word processor. It's like what word processors for like GUIs were, in the 90s. They just word processed. Bold, italics, some fonts, ta-da, all done. I loved that. It was just simple. It did what it was needed to do. And so it stinks. A lot of times I end up having to save things out as like rich text or HTML or whatnot in order to move them between the two seamlessly. But it should be able to do open documents just fine, but it doesn't always. It's not proprietary. It's just a little bit buggy. So, sorry, buddy. I don't. You use mostly LibreOffice, I'm assuming.
I use Collabora. I know
that's fine. I like Collabora. It's cool.
I like Collabora. It took me a long time to actually get it set up in a Docker instance. It was such a pain in the butt. But in
a Docker instance, look at you being all containery. Yeah. Man, who's living in the new millennium?
Oh, dude, I had to set up a reverse proxy. Ooh.
A reverse proxy, please.
It was nice. I didn't care for that whole process.
Nobody does. No one likes that process. That's not something people yearn for.
No.
Nathan asks, would you rather have... we kind of touched on this earlier. Would you rather have every currently existing game receive a fully native Linux support right now? So every game that's ever existed, native Linux client. current and past, or a guarantee that every future game will have a native Linux port?
See, this is too much of an open-ended question.
We do that here. Just be thankful we don't have one of those, you're in a spaceship. What operating system is powering the photon torpedoes? Because we've gotten those.
I plan on asking Jonathan Frakes that question when I meet him. What operating system was running on the Enterprise? Can you please explain?
It was LCARS. But yeah, so anyway.
Open source, that's the question.
Is LCARS open source?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I assume so.
Yeah, I know.
I just assumed it was. I mean, because they don't sell it because that's how their economy doesn't work that way. Anyway, okay, so future games or current and all past games, one or the other. You can't have both.
I mean, the question is this every game ever made? Like
every game ever made, every video game ever made is what it says, or every future game. Today's the cutoff line. Right now, draw it in the sand. I already know what my answer is. I'm
kind of leaning towards every future game.
That's a garbage answer.
Because here's why. It's like what does Super Mario Bros. 2 on a modern Linux distro actually look like? Or I mean Super Mario Bros. 3, because that's the good one. What does that look like on a modern Linux operating system?
Ouch. Dude, I love throwing turnips. I need me some Super Mario Brothers 2. Well, see, it looks like what it used to look like. It's just that everything's native. So every computer game, every console game, everything, like Master of Orion 2, Civilization 1 is all native for Linux now.
But cool. I have too many questions. Are they running at 4K resolutions? Are they running at native resolution?
Yeah, let's say you expand it out, but it gets blockier the bigger it gets. But blocky is cool looking, so you like that.
I don't know.
No remastered HD editions. Tired of these remastered HD editions. My goodness.
I say that's what I want. I'd rather have future
games. You know what's funny?
The past is the past, Brian.
I can't
let it die.
We're moving on. This could devolve. Devil, I'm gonna beat you up, as one must say. Holy moly. Bob asks, what is the best Linux distro for games and support for things like AMD drivers? What do you think? If you were to advise someone who's a hardcore gamer to be using Linux right now, what's the distro? What is the one?
That's a tough question, because it's like,
come on, Linux gamer.
Are you new to Linux or not? That's really what.
For everyone, new users, advanced users, what's the end-all be-all of Linux gaming? A gaming distro.
I mean, the one that
everyone. What are you running right now?
I run Manjaro.
Okay, and does that run great for games?
It's okay. It's not excellent. The thing is,
do not come back to me and say Ubuntu. Do not come back to me and say Ubuntu.
Every developer targets every single one. That's why it's terrible to say, but man, that's what it is. Gotta say it. I have to say that.
Dude.
I know, right?
Dude.
I run Manjaro on principle.
You know what?
Pain in my butt sometimes when I want to just freaking play a game and stuff breaks and I'm like, I don't even know. I gotta update from the freaking Arch repository. Woohoo! Here we go, AUR, and then things don't compile, and I'm like, Dude, I just want things to work.
Oh no, the Linux gamer's right, everybody. You want to do an Ubuntu or an Ubuntu-based distribution. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's Ubuntu normal. Like, I don't use Ubuntu. Oh my gosh. So let me show this here. So this is the new Dell XPS, right? The newer one. They sent me one over to review, and I was taking a look at it. And I won't spoil anything about the review other than the fact that there's no USB ports. There's no USB ports on this, and that made it very challenging for me. I was using Ubuntu because it's what it ships with. The latest version of Ubuntu has these bugs in it where mouse and keyboard focus get trapped by Ubuntu's like customized version of GNOME Shell, and so you can't just like randomly, like it happened to me like 7 or 8 times. All of a sudden, I just can't do keyboard or mouse input anymore, and like GNOME Shell doesn't do that. Every other GNOME Shell distro I use doesn't do that. Only this. So I went and grabbed a USB thumb drive. I'm like, okay, well here's a little USB thumb drive. Okay, I'm gonna load it up with Elementary or Debian or Pop or whatever, and put it on there, and I go look at it. No USB port. So it's sitting there right now, and I need to load something else on it with a friggin' dongle, and grumpy Brian. But yeah, I'd go with Elementary or Pop or one of those distros, one of the Ubuntu's, but not Ubuntu. That's the way I'd go personally.
One of the Ubuntu is a good way to put it.
Yeah, one of the not technically Ubuntu's. That's the way to go. This is kind of a fun one. This is also from Bob. Have you tried Linux on Amiga or Next hardware? Are there any retro platforms that are especially good or bad in regards to Linux support? I'll let you take this one first, Gardener, the Linux gamer. Which retro platforms, such as Amiga, Next, let's go PowerPC Mac, some old 68K systems, that do you like to install Linux on?
The last non-standard PC that I installed Linux on was a 2006 iMac.
An x86 one?
Yeah, it was an x86. Non-standard PC. I don't explore outside.
Windows on that. Like that's not
You hand the question off to me, and I'm going to give you a boring answer.
That's not a. So all right. So I haven't done this in a while, Bob. Other than on like ARM-based devices, I have a lot of ARM-based devices, but those all kind of were built for Linux anyway. Dude, how is that?
Oh, dude, it's so good.
Wait, before we go further, everyone, look at what Gardner explained to everyone what you've got right there. The Clockwork.
This is the Clockwork game shell, and it's awesome. It's so good. It's running. I think it's an ARM processor.
Yeah,
and it can play. Like my biggest complaint is that it only has 4 face buttons, and otherwise it's like, like you can play Super Nintendo games, you can play Game Boy Advance, you can play a bunch of retro games, and it works great. I haven't had a problem running any ROMs.
How are the keys? How are the buttons on it? Buttons feel good?
The buttons are my biggest complaint about the thing, because they're membrane and you install them yourself.
Yeah.
And they can kind of rotate in a weird way.
Okay.
That doesn't feel, it feels a little, just a tiny bit cheap.
Yeah.
And when you have if you take the shell off the top here, then they just rest on the membrane, and if you take the game shell apart and you're not here, these keys they'll just fall off and you might lose them. So I mean, it's cool that you have it apart toolless in places where you might want to get to the SD card, but you can really quickly and easily lose the keys, and that's kind of disappointing.
How much did that run?
This was $99.
That seems pretty rad. That's a pretty cool gizmo. I've got a couple of buddies who have picked that up, and they've all been really happy with it so far. That's cool. That's wicked cool. I mean, it's not. I built it myself, 3D printed all the parts, and put a Raspberry Pi in it, and there's an Ethernet jack on the side, because you can't have a handheld game console without an Ethernet jack right here, baby. But it's still pretty cool. Then again, the buttons on my handheld one are terrible. I printed them with PLA, and the clickiness, you can hear that, is nice. But they feel hard. I need to do them with Ninja Flex rubber or something like that. Anyway. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's all right.
The D-pad actually feels pretty good, but the games themselves aren't.
I need to see if I can convince them to send me one. So back to your question, Bob. The last time I was really going off into the weeds in terms of putting Linux on weird hardware was a 68K Macintosh, which is totally doable. There's a couple of Red Hat based 68K distros from back in the day. I haven't tried any modern ones, but it was totally doable and it ran great. I also ran on an old PowerPC version of, I want to say it was Yellow Dog, which is a version of Red Hat that ran on some old PowerPC Macintoshes, like some early G3s and some 604E PowerPCs. Those were glorious. Oh, those were awesome. Support was real finicky, but it was great to use. Those did work really well. I've never put Linux on an Amiga because I don't know. I feel like an Amiga is an Amiga, you know? Like an Amiga's not at this point like commodity hardware. You know, you get an Amiga because you want to run Amiga stuff. You know what I mean? It's like you don't do that to your Amiga. It's like you don't get like a, I don't know, like a 3DO, right? You don't go buy a 3DO game console to run PlayStation games, even if you could find a way to emulate it. You don't do that. You get it for the 3DO. Like it's a special thing. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But old 68K Macs and PowerPC Macs, which you can buy like G3 iBooks and iMacs and whatnot for pretty cheap nowadays, they actually make pretty good little Linux boxes. They work pretty well. Yeah. Yeah, it's not a bad way to go.
The next one I want to install Linux on, the next piece of hardware, is an Xbox 360.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I haven't. I want to do like a reset glitch hack on my 360 and maybe run a little Linux on it.
Dude, that'd be awesome. That would make it such a cooler system. That'd be rad. Alexander asks, why did you choose to buy an NVIDIA card and not an AMD one, which has very good open source drivers for your editing tasks? Also, do you encode in Kdenlive with a GPU? If you do, how did you personally add support for that? Gardner, use NVIDIA cards or AMD cards?
I have a NVIDIA card in my desktop right now, but I'm going to be getting a Vega 64 pretty soon.
Nice.
I'm pretty stoked about it, although I'm using NVNC or NVEncode or whatever
for
OBS. There isn't the support there for the AMD version of that quite yet.
Right.
I know I haven't done it yet, but that's
my understanding as well. See, it's kind of the same sort of thing. Do you use GPU encoding in Kdenlive, or you just stick with the CPU encoding?
I haven't screwed around with that because every time I mess with the encoder settings in Kdenlive,
it explodes.
Break.
Yeah, it explodes. Yeah, agreed. So I don't do the GPU encoding in Kdenlive either. I use the GPU, the NVEnc in OBS with an NVIDIA card, and it runs fantastically, which is why I'm using an NVIDIA card at this point. That's because I know it's going to work good for those sorts of tasks. I have heard of some people using an AMD card, though, in OBS and can get it working well, but it's early. You know what I mean? It's a little bit shaky still. So I kind of am with Gardner on this one. I think maybe my next one or the one after that, I don't know. I could see an AMD card in my future because I want more open source drivers, because that's one of the few things on my system that's not open is the video card driver and then the games that use it. That's like really the only thing that ends up being closed on my system. And if I get rid of the driver, that would make me really happy. That would make me really, really happy. So that's why. There's no other reason for me than that.
It irritates me that like my driver for my graphics card doesn't just come in pre-installed in Linux.
I know.
That's what drives me nuts.
To be fair, so I put Windows. So I have right here, I've got this rig with a nice GTX 1080. I mean, it's a killer rig I do for my video work, right?
Yeah.
I put Windows 10 on here for my month in Windows thing. I had to reboot like 20 times and install like 50 different drivers just to get things kind of working. Like it took forever. And so, you know, I feel the same way. I wish I just had open source drivers as part of the kernel that I just got, and then it just worked in Linux. But now that I've seen how bad it is in Windows world, I suddenly don't feel so bad anymore. I'm like, okay, I can do one apt install or zipper install and I'm done. Okay, I'll live with the hardness of all of that with one reboot. It's not bad.
I had to. There was a Windows install that had a password that nobody could figure out what it was, and I had to reinstall Windows on it, and it used like. When I like Googled this thing, it had like 14 different hardware revisions with 4 different Wi-Fi chips, and I had to download each one and try them because
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out which one belonged to it. It's been so long, and I don't think I got everything. There were still like 8 devices in the task.
I'm with you.
Device manager.
I totally understand.
Oh my god.
Life is hard.
Oh,
The challenges we must face. These are big ordeals.
Windows. It's so crappy. Anyway,
So crappy. I need to do a final video. I've been avoiding it because I'm just gonna just rant for an hour about how much I didn't like it. But on my Windows 10 experience, it was bad.
Yeah.
Henry asks, I recently joined the Gentoo forum. My condolences, and made a post there. I was met with several negative responses. Naturally, although not hostile. Hey, that's a leg up. I found quite unwelcoming. There we go. Why are distro communities such as Arch and Gentoo so unfriendly and not cool? Henry. I would like everyone on the internet to recognize right now that this is what Henry said, not what Lunduk said. Lunduk simply agrees with Henry. So you don't really use normal Arch. You do the Manjaro route or whatnot. But do you find that too? Do you hop into the forums for Arch or Gentoo or anything like that and ask questions? I do from time to time, and when I do, I don't do it as me. Like I
don't want to be read the effing manual because that's what
that's what you always get. It's what you always friggin' get. So I used to do it as me, but when I do it as me, people are like, get out of here, friggin' Lunduk, and then they just get upset with me because in comes friggin' Lunduk friggin' asking friggin' questions, and they get all angry. And by the way, they don't say friggin', they say other words that are far less work safe. And so I'd go in there under like a separate kind of like a pseudo anonymous account, which I'm not a huge fan of being anonymous on the internet. That's a whole separate thing, but sometimes it makes sense. So I'd go in there and I'd ask a question like, does anyone know is there a good source I can grab to build from source for this driver or for that particular thing? And whether I'm anonymous or I'm me, it's just usually just ugh. Like if it's not outright anger, it's general, like not hostility. I would almost say, yeah, unwelcoming is a good stance. It's like, well, why didn't you already go and read this document over here? Why didn't you do that? It's like,
yeah.
well, I didn't know that existed. You could have rephrased that and said, here is the document that I would have used, and then I would have gone and used it. But instead, you're like, well, why didn't you just do that before coming in here and asking us and wasting all of our times in the support forum that's meant for people to come in and ask questions and waste people's time?
Brian, you should have known that you had to check this very obscure error log that
right.
would you to exactly the document you needed, except that the error fails silently most of the time in most use cases, except when
you don't even know there's an error log to start with.
Yeah, for real. God.
Anyway, honestly, Gentoo and Arch are, from a technological perspective, pretty cool. Like they accomplish really cool things, and a lot of times they do it in really cool ways. And I have a lot of mad respect for them. And some of the core people that work on them are amazing at what they do. Like, huge props to both of those communities to making that work. But man, some of the communities around both of those, and they're not the only ones, are just kind of mean, like not welcoming. And that makes a big difference when you're trying to find a home. I would rather have a distro that's kind of flaky, but has just this really helpful, loving community that'll help walk people through it, than a distro that works great all the time with the most hostile community imaginable. Because I don't want to go to the conference for, distro XYZ and just have it be a giant hate fest. I want us to be able to goof off and have fun. And I don't know, I just don't feel like you can do that in the Arch and Gentoo worlds. Arch is better than Gentoo in that regard, but that's Brian, my personal feeling.
Brian, read the effing manual, and while we're at it, no virtual hugs, okay?
Virtual hugs everywhere. I hug everybody.
I think the main takeaway from this question...
friendship is magic. I'm going to say that straight up right now, dog.
All right.
Bronies for life.
I'll give you a hug.
We've already hugged. We'll hug more next time I see you.
Absolutely. I think the main takeaway though from this
Yeah.
is that those who can use the Arch or Gentoo forums, those who can't make YouTube videos about Linux.
That's not entirely wrong. Next question. Norman asks, do you believe that we one day as a species will live with computers using the herd kernel? More seriously, do you think that herd will one day catch up with the Linux kernel? And if so, could it replace it? No. No. Did you mute yourself?
No, I was just
Oh.
the herd kernel would look like, if you're watching this video.
Oh, that's what that was. Okay. So wait. I did a video like a year ago where they had a release of the herd kernel, and I mapped out the number of bugs that they've been fixing, and then their pathway to their 1.0, and I mapped it out, and I wanted to say it was like 2070 something that herd 1.0 will ship, something like that, based on their current like trajectory. So no, I don't think it's gonna happen. That was even that was tongue in cheek. Everyone who saw that was laughing because it was like way in the future, and even that everyone's like, it's not actually gonna ship. I mean, it's not gonna happen. So no. Herd is fine, but there's just no momentum behind it. There's no resources behind it. It's just not gonna happen. It would be cool, but it's not gonna happen. Norman asks, question for Gardner, but such an important one. This is just for you, my friend. This is how we're gonna end our show today. How in the world do you deal with your curly hair? If I let my curly hair grow more than an inch or two, it looks as if a dead animal as I have a dead animal on the top of my head. Yet you are there, standing in front of the camera, showing off those glorious curly hairs of yours. The world, me, needs to know how you do it. Normand.
Poor hygiene. I get asked this question a lot, and when when I tell people what I do for my hair, people are like, "Oh," because legit, I just don't wash it. I wash my hair once a week, maybe, with actual soap or shampoo.
So like I know a ton of people that do the no poo thing, like the no shampoo thing, because I mean they make a point, if you over shampoo your hair, it strips it of blah blah blah. I don't know, because I don't think about it that much, but I like a ton of people I know do that, and honestly their hair looks fine. Clearly they don't need to shampoo their hair every day. And I keep making the thing, if I don't wash my hair every day, I look so greasy and gnarly, like I just look crazy greasy. And they've made the point to me, if I stopped shampooing my hair every friggin' day, eventually that would stop happening, and then my hair would be healthier. But I just use a bar of soap. I just rub a bar of soap on the top of my head, and why are you making a thing? Why are you making a face?
That's really actual bar soap is actually bad for your hair and the oil in your hair. I mean, honestly, I don't do much with my hair, and honestly, I'm not an expert on this at all. But when I was a teenager, I washed my hair with shampoo every day, and it was frizzy and gross looking, and I hated it. I cut my hair really short all the time.
Yeah.
Then I wanted to be a rebel, so I started growing my hair out long, and a bunch of women that I went to church with were like, if you're gonna have long hair, just don't put shampoo in it. Every third time you take a shower, shampoo your hair. And I was like, really? That's pretty cool. Right. And then I did that, and that's how I've done my hair ever since. I don't do anything else except that for my hair. I do nothing else. I don't use cream or oils or anything. It's just that's how it is naturally now.
Cream or oils?
I have friends.
Do people use cream and oil in their hair? Do people do that? I don't know. I'm not asking derogatorily. There's people out there that use cream and oil. They're like, I use cream and oils. No, I don't. Nothing against cream and oils. I literally just use a bar of soap. For me, I just put a bar of soap on my head, and my armpits, and I just do it all at once. One big bar of soap. I'm done. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's how you maintain those glorious locks of yours. Now we
Maintain
know.
generous. I would say
Enhance,
deliberate
glorify. Clearly, people love the locks. This episode of the Lunduke Show is brought to you in part by Purism, who make laptops with kill switches. Why does everyone not put kill switches in laptops? Why do people not do that? Gardner, are you psyched as all get out for your Librem 5 smartphone?
Dude, I can't even put words to how excited I am.
You ordered one.
I did.
Yeah,
I order number 1053. So
nice.
There's cred right there.
Oh man, and have you been following all their updates as they've been posting them?
They can't post enough, man. I
know, right?
I devour their articles.
I do too, and I do it, and it's not even because like they sponsor the show and whatnot. Like there's nothing I could do with it because I don't have the smartphone. I just keep watching it because I find it fascinating how they're putting a phone together and they're approaching it from the hardware and the software and like how they're approaching it. Like I just find it interesting because we've seen so many examples of like smartphones failing. Like I mean, big Linuxy companies can't seem to do it. And so watching in a really transparent way as Purism puts it all together is really, I don't know, it's almost like it's cathartic and it's interesting to see how it all comes together. I'm fascinated. If you would like to pick up a laptop or a smartphone with kill switches, go to Purism's website, puri.sm. Quick, Gardner, the .sm top level domain name, where's it come from?
From the work group.
New Smingland is the correct answer. I do not actually know. I've not looked it up, and I keep trying to figure it out without looking it up because I think it would be funner. But that is their top-level domain name is .sm, and I think it's hilarious. All right, and Lulzbot, makers of Lulzbot 3D printers. What kind of 3D printer you have, Gardner?
It's not a Lulzbot.
I know. What brand is it?
Oh, it's a Monoprice.
That's garbage. Lulzbot makes the Lulzbot Mini and the Lulzbot Taz, and they rad. I literally hug mine almost every day. It is the most beautiful thing in the world. It is my baby. The Lulzbot Taz 6 is big. It's got a nice like 11 point something inch print bed, so big you can print almost anything on it. But I tell you, there's something about the Lulzbot Mini. If you go to Lulzbot's website, the Lulzbot Mini, it's cheaper. I'm sure Lulzbot would like me to sell more of the Lulzbot Taz 6 to you because it's the bigger, more expensive one. And it is bigger. It prints a whole lot more, and it's amazing. But the Mini is just like, it's the 3D printer that you just want to hug while it's printing things. Like, I love it. It is my friend. Anyway, go over to lulzbot.com for all that information. Oh, and this guy right here, he's the Linux Gamer. He's got a YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/thelinuxgamer, you can find all of his delightful shows, and he has a Patreon page. What's your Patreon URL, Gardner?
Patreon.com/thelinuxgamer.
Oh my God! I even have it on the screen right here. It was sort of theoretical, a metaphorical question I was asking. I knew it was right there. But yes, I support the Linux Gamer. You know why? Do you know why, people? No, I was talking to the camera right there. It was I'm talking to these people, not the Gardner. Not shush Gardner, shush.
All right.
You know why I support people like Linux Gamer? Because they're awesome. That's it. Simple, right? Is that a simple question? Is that a simple answer?
That's a simple answer. I'd say that's pretty good.
Answer. Pretty good one, right? I like good Linux content. And there's not enough great Linux content out there, and Gardner is making some of it. And so good on you, buddy. And of course, you can support me over at patreon.com/Brian Lunduke. If you're watching the show and you're not a subscriber, consider it. It keeps the lights on, and you know what? This show is better with the lights on. Or you can find more of my stuff over at lunduke.com. So check it out, Gardner. I'm slowly ditching YouTube, right? Because I'm finding YouTube to be kind of pointless to me right now. Like it's only good as like an advertising revenue at this point. So I'm putting all the clips up there and whatnot, but I'm releasing all the shows self-hosted on my server. And I'm taking all of my classic stuff, like my older shows, like the ones that got a lot of views. I'm putting them on my own server. and then putting them over on lunduke.com. So there's just like a grid of some of my favorite shows. So if you want some of my favorite shows like the Linux Sucksy stuff and whatnot, go to lunduke.com. Even if you're not a subscriber, you can find links to them at the bottom of the page at lunduke.com, and I'll just keep adding those as we go. And Capital F Magazine issue 1 is out. I know most of you has read it because, oh my lord, so many people have read this magazine, which kind of freaks me out a little bit because I was not prepared for this many people to be reading this magazine and commenting on it and emailing me about it. However, if you go to capitalf.org, you can read an article from Gardner, the Linux Gamer, on video production with free software, plus a whole bunch of random ramblings from me. Issue 2 comes out in October. It's free for everybody, so you can just grab it. If you want to buy a digital or a physical copy, you can. The digital copy is just free. Issue number 2 is going to be free too. It's going to be awesome. Is there anything else we need to say? Oh yes, credits. I have credits. I'm spinning my credits right now. These are people who support this show, and the names just fly by. Over and over again, because OBS doesn't have a scrolling effect that just starts at one end and moves to the other end and then stops. It just repeats forever. So that's what's happening right now. Gardner, is there anything crazy going on in the Linux Gamer world that people should know about as we send them off into this wonderful world?
Well, if you want to support Linux gaming, there's no better way to do that than to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Aside from Valve, I am the face of Linux gaming. Just saying.
It's right there in your name, son. It's right there in your name.
There's a reason I chose that name, Brian.
Is really? By the way, I love your fuzzy mic cover. It looks to me like you're just talking into the butt of a Tribble, and I love that image. Has been in my head the entire show. Okay, let's not do that. We're gonna go ahead and make the video go away now. See you later, everybody. I'll see you next week.